Zelda, oh, Breath of the Wild. What is? Look at that controller.
I hate the view of that controller.
Oh, dude, this looks great. Okay, Breath of the Wild looks awesome. Breath of the Wild looks awesome.
What a dick.
Watch this before you watch this. What? Whoa. Whoa. No, what?
Oh! Remember this? No, I don't mean the Switch or its reveal, I mean this.
I've got one! Guys, I'm hyped.
The hype for the Nintendo Switch. I mean, I do. When this thing was first announced and released, the hype for it was insane. People couldn't believe you could take home console games on the go. I couldn't stop hearing about the system or the games. Oh my god, the games? Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 2, Super Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Super Mario Odyssey? The hype for the system around its launch is something I had never seen before. As I'm filming this, the Switch 2 is right around the corner, and the lead up to this system has had me reflecting on the first Switch. I've been replaying all my favorite games, watching old reviews and videos, preparing to say goodbye to the console. And in doing this, I think I've realized just how much the Switch means to me. Without the Switch, I don't know if I'd appreciate games the way I do now, and I definitely wouldn't have gotten some of my favorites of all time. And reliving all of this has had me wondering, how did we get here? How did the Switch come about? What happened during its life? When are the doctors gonna call me back about that rash? This is my favorite system of all time, and I want to understand it from top to bottom. So sit back, relax, and grab some popcorn, because today we're going over a full history, more or less, of this funny little rectangle. My name is Zoe Withney, and this is the Nintendo Switch. To understand the Switch, first we have to understand what came before it. The Wii U. The Wii U was Nintendo's worst performing console of all time. It barely sold 10 million units and was the laughingstock of the gaming industry for basically its entire life. The Wii U pandered to a casual audience that wouldn't just buy a new console because it's the new console. And because it pandered to a casual audience, there were very few games a more hardcore audience would actually give a shit about. And most of them had substitutes on the 3DS, which was infinitely cheaper, more practical, and oh yeah, good. There were definitely good games here. Super Mario Maker, Splatoon, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Mario Kart 8, Super Mario 3D World. But none of them were system sellers. You're not gonna buy a whole new console just for Mario Kart, a new IP, a game you have to make yourself, a pretty decent but uninnovative 3D Mario, and a fucking ape. And once third-party developers like EA and Ubisoft ceased development on the platform, Nintendo began scrambling to patch that Wii U-shaped hole in the wall. So behind the scenes, they put a new console into development, and at the time, they needed this to be a success. This console would be their make or break. So they sought to combine their at the time already successful handheld market with their home console market. See, Nintendo handhelds have always been something of a safe bet. The Game Boy, the Game Boy Advance, the DS, and the 3DS all did well despite the performance of whatever Nintendo home console was out at the time. These little fuckers have always had their own audience. They're more affordable and convenient to have on the go, making them a great get for kids or casuals, as well as appealing to core fans who want a way to disappoint mum and dad without needing a HDMI cord. Not to mention Pokemon, which basically guarantees a few million units sold. And when it comes to handheld gaming, going with Nintendo was always a no-brainer, because what else are you gonna do? Buy a PSP? You in what army? Well, we have Hey Pikmin. By combining their handhelds and consoles into one system, they were guaranteed at least some success, or at least more success than this lovely little pimple. So they drew up a bunch of drafts, with the finalized version feeling a lot like a souped up Wii U gamepad you can dock to play on your TV, which actually makes a lot of sense. Say what you will about the gamepad and its list of crimes, but it's a solid controller, and Nintendo even originally pushed it as somewhat portable. If someone else is using the TV, play on the gamepad. But if you went more than 30 feet away from a console, it just wouldn't work, so in reality the gamepad is about as portable as me sleeping in a tent in my back garden is camping. But as the system was being developed, in the summer of 2016, things about it began to leak. Back then, it was referred to as the Nintendo NX, and it got out that it would be a hybrid console, use an Nvidia chipset, and have two detachable controllers. At the time, this was pretty wild. A hybrid system had never been done before, and people went crazy, speculating and making all kinds of fake leaks. And while a lot of people were hyped, there were others who were skeptical or even against the idea of a new Nintendo console. The people who were skeptical argued that Nintendo just couldn't do another console. Their fanbase was too small now, it just wouldn't work. But like, Seriously? It's fucking Nintendo. You could show Super Mario to Gam Gam and fix the generational divide. Just because the Wii U underperformed doesn't mean that Nintendo faded from a public eye or anything. You still had the 3DS, Pokemon Go, Amiibo, all neat little side gigs that kept the company from fully tanking this generation. And the people who were mad were mostly upset that it felt like Nintendo was abandoning the Wii U, which is honestly kind of hard to deny. I mean, this thing had a short lifespan, with a good chunk of it being overshadowed by the Switch, and in its last year or two, the games releasing on it were scarce as all hell and just plain bad. Like I said, the Wii U did get good games, but I think it's fair enough that Wii U owners felt kind of betrayed by Nintendo jumping ship. But Nintendo didn't care. They were putting all of their focus into making sure that the NX didn't flop like the Wii U, and that came to a head in October of 2016. My god, this was a good reveal. But before we go over why this is so good, first I want to go over why the Wii U advertisements weren't. The Wii U ads boiled down to one of three things: the video game coming to life and taking over the real world, a family playing the Wii U where one of the family members or a narrator reads a laundry list of reasons to buy a Wii U, or painfully unfunny skits.
Mario and Peach together. Me and Gina together.
Oh, okay, this one's actually pretty nostalgic. I remember when I got my first boner looking at Super Mario. Compare this to the reveal of the Switch and it's night and day. Instead of treating the audience like a toddler with shitty skits, or pandering exclusively to families, or telling you why you should want this great new game, they instead just show the system and the games in use. No list of reasons to buy the console, no game breaking out into the real world, no bullshit, just people playing video games. Not to mention the demographic they were targeting felt much more aware than the Wii U. With the Wii U, they were targeting almost exclusively families and kids, and I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that families and kids aren't a big part of Nintendo's install base. I have like 7 cousins who own a Switch Lite, but don't know what the fucking alphabet is. But the largest demographic of Switch players is 20 to 25. My point is, this reveal feels like it really understands that. Instead of showing a family having a super fun time playing some wacky Switch games, they show real people just enjoying video games, be it in the comfort of their home, on the go, with friends, or competitively. Nintendo targeted this demographic because they knew this is who would care about the reveal of a new system. These are the people who will tune in to the reveal and pick up the new system at launch, and this advert feels like a celebration of that. I mean, we've got to take Nintendo celebrating esports where we can, because oof. Besides all of that, this reveal showcased some stupidly enticing games. New Zelda, new Mario, new Splatoon, Mario Kart, fucking Skyrim? This may seem normal now with our Steam Decks and PlayStation Portals, but at the time, Skyrim on the go was fucking insane. So we've got some exciting games, a refreshing design, and a new Nintendo that feels like they know their audience all within the first reveal. Yeah, I'd say this was pretty good. And while for the most part that sentiment was shared, the system still had its doubters. Some people just didn't think that Nintendo had it in them anymore and that the Switch was doomed to fail. Nintendo's stock even saw a little dip there, with investors just not believing that the Switch was a safe bet. But in my opinion, the idea that Nintendo didn't know what they were doing with the Switch would be proven completely wrong on January 13th, 2017. Nintendo held a presentation detailing just about everything you'd want to know about the Switch. The price was revealed to be a pretty stomachable $300, there was no more region locking, there would be a paid online service, which kinda stinks, but holy shit, the games. Holy shit, the games. 1-2 Switch, ARMS, Xenoblade 2, Splatoon 2, Dragon Quest, Super Mario Odyssey, and Breath of the Wild? Both within the same year, with Breath of the Wild being a fucking launch title. This was insane, and only served to build more hype for the system while showing the doubters that Nintendo might not actually fuck it up this time. Around this time, even I became aware of the Switch, and I was a dumbass 10-year-old with extremely limited internet access and no idea what the fuck a Star Fox was. I cannot put into words how much hype there was for this system. This was such a special time, people couldn't wait, and come March 3rd, 2017, they wouldn't have to wait any longer.
And I'm hoping that whatever it is, you don't pull a switch. Watch out! Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, there it is. Oh boy.
So this tastes like glass, and glass does not taste good.
The Switch's launch was electric. People were flocking to buy this thing. It sold 2.74 million units in the first month alone, 1 million more than Nintendo expected. And at the time, the system felt so special.
Being a 10-year-old at the time, seeing one of these out in the wild felt like an event. Like, how did you do that?
The overall response to the Switch's launch was a little more lukewarm in general. While people enjoyed the system and were generally in awe of the portability, there were two main complaints thrown towards it. That being that the hardware was faulty and that there weren't enough games on the thing. In terms of faulty hardware, people were getting their screens scratched by their docks along with reports of dead pixels and glitchy displays. Additionally, people also discovered how easy it was to put the Joy-Con grip on the wrong way.
Whoa, did you go like way over?
Is this the wrong side?
Is this?
Do we have the wrong sides?
Oh, we do have the wrong. Okay, so it's very evident.
Oh, mine's stuck now.
Oh, mine's stuck too.
Oh, this is like cemented on now. What the fuck? Uh-oh.
Are you fucking kidding me?
For the most part, these issues were pretty far and few between, and as far as the Joy-Con grip issue is concerned, people found some pretty easy ways to unstick them. However, it's hard to deny that this did put a damper on things. Faulty products are expected within the launch of a new system, it's just a fact of life, but the amount reported with the Switch was just a little daunting. However, for the people complaining about the games at launch... Huh?
You had 1-2 Switch, Snippet Clips, Fast RMX, I Am Setsuna, Just Dance 2017, Skylanders Imaginators, Super Bomberman R, and Shovel Knight Treasure Trove.
Those were all on the Switch at launch, and honestly, what more do you need? What, do you want a generationally defining open world with near endless objectives, a beautiful art style, a great soundtrack, all told within an already beloved franchise?
The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. This might just be the video game of all time. I mean, what can I even say that hasn't been said already? The game is a fantastic redefining of not only the Zelda franchise, but open worlds as a whole. The game gives you this beautiful and depressing reimagining of the world of Zelda. Set in a version of Hyrule 100 years removed from disaster, we get to see beloved locations now destroyed or in the process of being rebuilt. It's a surprisingly melancholic and bleak world whilst also feeling hopeful and beautiful. And outside of the atmosphere, exploring this world is one of the most freeing experiences in all of gaming. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. There's no one right way to play this game, which not only makes each playthrough unique to the individual player, but the playthrough itself. No one run through of this game is gonna play out like the last. This is truly a game you could keep playing forever and never run out of things to do or new discoveries to make. Not to mention the gorgeous art style, or the beautifully somber soundtrack, or the characters, or the DLC. This is, in my opinion, one of the greatest games of all time. A game that defines games, and it was right here at the system's launch. What more could you want? Having a game this big, this defining, and this good at the launch of the Switch really set the tone moving forward.
Not to mention the fact that this game was on a portable system, which was pretty hard to fathom at the time. It was crazy that you could play this game on the go, you could play it anywhere, the sky was the limit.
Post Wii U, Nintendo was done being the safe, casual pandering company, and they started delivering experiences you had to have again.
And this energy was continued throughout the Switch's first year. Games kept coming out, Switches kept selling, and people kept discovering funny little quirks about the system. For example, the Switch's game cards were discovered to have a bitter taste. Just like Grandma. Oh, and you can't forget the funny noises the home screen makes when you press certain buttons. Just like Grandma.
I mean, outside of that, there wasn't a whole lot though. One of the main criticisms thrown towards the Switch back then and even now was that it feels like it lost a lot of the Nintendo personality. I mean, this home screen is all business. No fun music like past Nintendo consoles, no interesting themes. I mean, your only options are black and white. Just like Grandma.
Overall, I have to agree with these complaints. While I personally really like the sleeker, more traditional take Nintendo has taken with the Switch and the Switch 2, it's hard to deny that so much of the Nintendo personality seen in things like the GameCube or Wii just isn't as present with the Switch. It doesn't help that in the Switch's first year or two, a lot of its personality was derived from other systems.
The Switch saw a ton of titles that either felt like replacements for Wii U games, or were just straight up Wii U games. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Splatoon 2, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. So many games felt like replacements for ones on the Wii U, or were just being thrown onto the Switch from the Wii U, and it's hard not to see why Nintendo did this. The Switch was an actually successful console, the Wii U was a pit of despair. It just made sense to put these games where people will actually play them, but a consensus I see from the time is that people were a little tired of just how many Wii U replacement or repackaged titles there were.
However, let's not act like the Switch wasn't getting any good new games, because it definitely was.
One of which released later in 2017, the first Mario game on the system and a landmark event of a title. The Switch would have failed without it. Okay, let's talk about this one real quick. Mario plus Rabbids was a new crossover series introduced on the Switch, which combines Rabbids with various franchises like Donkey Kong and Rayman. But obviously the star of the show here is Mario. The first game is such a gem, man. I fucking love this game. The idea of a Mario and Rabbids crossover tactical RPG is so out there and bizarre even to this day, but they really took a batshit idea and made a straight up lovely game out of it. The soundtrack, well-designed story and animation in this game is such a pleasant little love letter to Mario, and the gameplay is shockingly competent for an RPG built off the back of the Rabbids.
The soundtrack especially is just so nice. Some of my personal favorites have to be Hoppers, Mid-Boss Mayhem, Peach's Castle theme, and Rabbid Kong's boss music. This game isn't anything groundbreaking, but it is overwhelmingly pleasant, and in my opinion something every Mario fan should give a chance. This game was clearly given to people who wanted to make a game set within the Mario universe, and it feels like they're constantly taking advantage of it, never taking the opportunity for granted.
Then you have the sequel to Kingdom Battle, Sparks of Hope.
Admittedly, I haven't played through this one just yet. I fully intend to, but as of right now, I can't really give my own informed opinion of the game.
But from what I've seen, this seems like a pretty solid sequel, expanding the formula and world established in the first game, albeit with a few odd choices. You're telling me this game made some weird decisions? They reworked the game's battle system so that you encounter enemies in the overworld and then fight them in a kind of sub-arena. This feels so lame compared to the first game. In Kingdom Battle you would fight enemies in the overworld you explored, which made it feel a lot bigger and more immersive. This feels like such a downgrade in comparison. They also left the Mushroom Kingdom in this game, which I don't think is as big as an issue as I think others do. I mean, how many times can they rework the Mushroom Kingdom to be an interesting location? But it does kind of lose that sense of being a love letter to Mario that the first game had, you know?
However, that wasn't the only Mario game released within the system's first year, because on October 27th, 2017, we got a much more traditional Mario title. It's Super Mario Odyssey. Ow.
Super Mario Odyssey is my favorite game of all time. As a Mario fan, I can admit that I'm biased towards this game over Breath of the Wild, but as a Mario fan, I can also admit that this game makes me hard. A lot of people pitted these games against each other because they were big, redefining titles for their respective series, both released within the Switch's launch year. And while I personally believe Breath of the Wild is the better game in the objective sense, holy shit, it's fucking Mario Odyssey, I would die for this game! They brought back the sandbox style established in 64, there's so much stuff to do and collect, all of these kingdoms are so unique and cool! The music is the best I've ever heard in a video game, every track here fucking rocks like Fossil Fools. Tostarena Ruins. Steam Gardens? New Donk City? New Donk City Cafe? Jump Up Motherfucking Superstar.
Here we go, off the rails. Did you know it's time to raise our sails? It's freedom like you never knew.
This game looks so good, the water is so quenchable, the animations are so smooth, the world design is fantastic. Oh my god, and the capturing mechanic? Being able to capture so many cool enemies? Some new additions to the franchise like the Gushen or Uproot, who have such cool designs by the way, or classic enemies like Bullet Bills and Goombas. This game is fucking fantastic. I would take a bullet for this game. It does such a good job bringing back beloved mechanics from older games and tweaking them in minute or massive ways to make them even better. Like, let's take moons for example. We've been collecting stars in Mario games for years. Star medals, green stars, normal stars, quirky ass sprite shines. And for years we've either just collected the handful that the level has to offer or just won and then kicked out of the level and forced to pick a different star. But with Odyssey, there's none of that. Instead you get one big sandbox level like Super Mario 64 or Sunshine and collect tens of moons back to back to back to back. Instead of having different versions of each level for every moon, all the moons are just here ready to collect, and it's so addictive and fun. It's so easy to lose yourself in this game, collecting as many moons as you can, constantly pushing off anything to do with productivity, because I swear to god I'm just gonna get one more moon. And that's just the moons! There's still coins, purple coins, outfits, minigames, and it's all held together by the glorious, delicious glue that is Mario's moveset. The moveset in this game is pure fucking cocaine, and I cannot get enough. Mario controls like butter, and his moveset is so diverse and large and long and girthy and oh shit, that's a hair. Even if you're just kind of average at the game like me, playing as Mario makes you feel like the world's greatest speedrunner, pulling off stunts and difficult jumps. And the game actively encourages this by hiding so many secrets for you to find this way.
I really could keep talking about this game, trust me. If this wasn't a much more grandiose look at the Switch as a whole, we'd be here all day. But that was pretty much for Switch's launch year. It got some good games, a few games that were good albeit a little derivative, and despite a launch with a couple of hiccups, for the first time in years, people weren't only hopeful for Nintendo's future, they were hyped.
Guys, I have never been so excited for a game. It's here. It's in my hands. Kind of.
Looking back now, the Switch's first year feels so special.
This was a time where the only way Nintendo could go was up. By the end of the Switch's first year, it had sold more than 10 million units. It was a runaway success far beyond anything we or Nintendo could have ever expected. And so far, the new games released for it redefined their respective series. Nintendo had laid the groundwork for an incredible system, and for a while after its launch, the Switch saw nothing but smooth sailing.
2018 was a solid year for the system, but it wasn't anything too crazy. We got some solid games people wanted for the system, like Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu, Super Mario Party, Mario Tennis Aces, and Kirby Star Allies. All of these were really nice to have on the system, but none of them really shook the world in the same way Breath of the Wild or Super Mario Odyssey did. Pokemon was great to have on the system, however this was just a remake at the end of the day, which weirdly enough incorporated a lot of the mechanics from Pokemon Go. Mario Party was nice to have, but from what I've heard, this one just wasn't all too great. And Mario Tennis Aces and Kirby Star Allies are both the kind of games you'd want to have on a Nintendo system, that being a Mario Sports title and Kirby, but both of these suffer from minimal content at launch. Instead, Nintendo opted to update these games with content later, which at the time was pretty wild by Nintendo standards. They did this with Splatoon, sure, but that makes sense. That's an online shooter. This is fucking tennis.
And they only got worse with this throughout the generation. I don't have an excuse here. The state that some of Nintendo's games have been releasing in as of late have been pretty pitiful, especially with Mario Sports titles like Strikers or Golf.
I don't think the idea of continuously updating a game after launch is bad, but with Nintendo this generation it felt a lot more like we were getting half-baked games that were then being completed later via post-launch updates. Not like we were getting full experiences at launch, with some bonuses here and there thanks to Nintendo's generous free updates.
For the bulk of 2018, the Switch was getting some solid titles, but it felt like a lot of them came with an asterisk. Like we got Pokemon on the system, the first full traditional Pokemon game on a home system in fact. But it was a remake and much more of a spin-off than a full new game. But at least we got Kirby and Mario Sports, with very little to do at launch. Nintendo was doing okay throughout 2018, but they needed another Breath of the Wild or Odyssey, some great big new game in a beloved series. Something flashy and impressive that everyone loves. It's fucking Smash Bros.
Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is, for lack of better words, the ultimate Smash Bros. Game. I mean, what do you want me to say? Every character ever in Smash is here, all with gorgeous new models and animations. Not to mention some stellar newcomers like Inklings, Min Min, Ridley, Banjo and Kazooie, Sephiroth, fucking Sora, and Steve from Minecraft. The fact this game gave us Minecraft Amiibo automatically makes it Game of the Year. 2 years later, Nintendo really hit it out of the park with this one. I mean, looking past the insane roster, this might be the most definitive Smash experience out there. There are so many great stages to choose from here. Super Mario and Minecraft might be the stuff of nightmares, but it makes for such a fun match. The item selection is fine, it adds enough variety to the gameplay, but it isn't too overly memorable. Outside of the most basic mechanics though, and just how incredible this character roster is, I don't really have a ton to say on this one. I've never really been the biggest Smash girl, in this household we do trans the right way, so I never really got too into this one.
I didn't play a ton of the online or get super into the competitive side or anything, but I did enjoy popping this one in from time to time to play with friends or just enjoy the novelty of kicking Isabelle's ass as an Enderman. But I can't clarify enough just how much respect I have for this game, even if it is just for the novelty alone.
We got Mickey Mouse on an amiibo, that's fucking great. And even after all of that, with all of these characters in the game, we never got fucking Waluigi. What's even the point? What's even the point?
But even outside of the novelty factor, this game did a lot for Nintendo throughout 2018. Nothing compares to the hype of Smash lead up, seeing new fighters announced, finding out new gameplay features, or seeing which ones will be making their return. And that kind of hype is exactly what Nintendo needed in 2018. It might not have been the same as 2017, but in 2018 the hype for the Switch was still going strong. But it wasn't going to be smooth sailing for much longer, because in 2019 Nintendo hit their first real rough patch with the Switch.
What? My Joy-Con is a drifty? So weird to think that is only in my imagination. The human mind is incredible.
In 2019, an issue with the Switch's controllers, the Joy-Con, began to rear its head. It was discovered that for some reason, as the Switch aged, the Joy-Con became susceptible to drifting.
I think I Joy-Con drifted.
Joy-Con drifted my way to victory.
Sick game, dude. Thank you, Nintendo. Love this console.
This means that while using the controllers, the game will behave as though you're pushing one of the control sticks, even if you aren't. Which obviously isn't good, and in many cases makes using the controllers either infuriatingly difficult or flat out impossible.
For a full breakdown of the situation, I'd recommend checking out Arlo's series of videos on the matter, but for the sake of this video, I'll boil it down to this. Controllers were breaking and Nintendo's response was awful.
Instead of fixing the issue, offering widespread replacements or refunds, Nintendo instead opted to bury their head in the sand. This was until July 23rd, 2019, when a class action lawsuit was filed against them, to which Nintendo quietly started offering repairs regardless of warranty expiration.
This is one of those times where I refuse to defend Nintendo. I see so many people try to humanize this company, and don't get me wrong, I'm not completely innocent there. I mean, I'm making a video tribute to one of their products for fuck's sake. I love the games and systems this company puts out, and I respect the fuck out of many of the people behind those games and systems. However, at the end of the day, Nintendo is not your friend. They're a company like any other. Time and time again, we've seen that they're not immune to taking down fan content, overcharging for products, and in the case of Joy-Con Drift, fucking over their consumers. It's safe to say that Nintendo needed a big win by the end of 2019, and just like 2018, this year we got a bunch of solid smaller titles leading up to a much bigger title at the end of the year.
In terms of the smaller titles, we got games like Luigi's Mansion 3, Super Mario Maker 2, Ring Fit Adventure, Tetris 99, and Yoshi's Crafted World. All pretty good titles. Luigi's Mansion, Mario Maker, and Crafted World were all decent installments in their respective series, Mario Maker especially. I've played the fuck out of this game. It's such a great expansion on the first game from a Wii U. Take everything good from a Wii U game and triple it. More game styles, more items, more item types, more players, and more things to create, like a world map maker added in the game's final 3 updates. I mean, this basically lets you make your own 2D Mario game. This is fantastic. In my opinion, this is how Nintendo should handle their free update strategy. This game was a complete experience at launch. I mean, this game is quite literally endless. The free updates here are really just great bonuses that improve the already great base game. Then you have Tetris 99 and Ring Fit, which were both really fun reimaginings of games we've had before. Tetris 99 being a battle royale take on Tetris, and Ring Fit being a Wii Fit style fitness game, even coming with a Ring-Con accessory like how Wii Fit came with the balance board back in the day.
Just like in 2018, the Switch was still getting some quality titles. We even got a new Zelda game, this time a remake of Link's Awakening from the Game Boy.
This game is so cute, man. The art style and loving attention to detail and remaking this game for a system that isn't a glorified calculator is so sweet. And it even released alongside a new Switch model. Are you fucking kidding me?
Nintendo, mate. You heard that people were having issues with their Joy-Cons, and instead of addressing the issue, you make a new console with the Joy-Con wielded on. The fuck?
There was a real big hesitancy in consumers at the time, and I can understand why so hard. With all these horror stories coming out about Joy-Con drift, yeah, this wasn't the best timing. Nowadays, I think it's a lot easier to look at the Switch in a more positive way. This is a really nice revision of the Switch. All the buttons here feel so nice and soft, the D-pad is actually functional, and the design is adorable, all at a much cheaper price. And I haven't heard too much about anyone struggling with drift on the Lite. It's definitely a thing and still just as unacceptable as regular Joy-Con drift, but from what I can see, it doesn't seem to be as big of an issue. Again, it isn't great. Hell, I'd even go as far to say it isn't good, but it does seem to be at least somewhat less prominent with the Lite.
After all of that, I have a bitter taste in my mouth. You can't just wash down gross money-grubbing tactics with Tetris and expect to call it a day. Nintendo needed a game, a great game, to put them back into people's good books, and on November 15th, 2019, they definitely made a game.
Pokemon Sword and Shield are games I have somewhat extensive history with. For some quick context, the earliest video currently public on my channel is a review of Pokemon Sword and Shield. There are older videos, but they're private, and this kicked off a new era for my channel. An era of reviews, video games, and eventually, movies. In this original review, I was very hard on Pokemon Sword and Shield, but to be honest, I've kind of come around to them.
Let me say right off the gate that I stand by the fact that these games aren't up to snuff and were and still are incredibly disappointing.
These games were the first original Pokemon games for home console, and instead of feeling like the next big step forward, they feel like some of the most derivative games to ever exist. It is the exact same gameplay formula with the exact same mechanics and story that they've been recycling since the Game Boy. Not to mention crappy animations, a lame-ass story you barely even get to experience, a repetitive gameplay loop, and an overall lackluster wild area. I mean, the wild area as a whole is just so disappointing. It feels like a dangling carrot of what this game could have been, and even then, it's not great.
But to be honest, part of me can't help but love these games. For every blaring negative, there's a little nugget of positive.
Like, the customization options they give you are easily the best in the series, especially when compared to Legend Arceus and Scarlet and Violet. Plus, the soundtrack here is so good, and even though the animation in this game is a pile of shit, definitely not worth justifying cutting half of all Pokemon or anything, I really enjoy this game's art design. There are parts of this game that look rougher than others. I mean, the wild area is actually unacceptable for a AAA release. It runs like shit and doesn't look much better, but for the most part, I honestly think the actual world of the game looks alright. The more compactly designed routes and towns are visually a lot better than the wild area, and given that this game is based on the UK and I'm afflicted with a disease known as being British, I have a massive soft spot for the world design here. This feels so homey and nostalgic for me. So many of the game's locations feel like places I've been before, and I can't help but kick my feet at the fact that Pokemon has never felt more at home. Now, does that make me a fan of this game? No, it makes me a hostage.
This game is below average at best. I might have a soft spot for it, but that doesn't make it a good game, especially when compared to the outings of other franchises on this console. I mean, look at games like Breath of the Wild or Odyssey, or hell, even games a few steps down like Link's Awakening, Luigi's Mansion 3, and Splatoon 2. The fact that this game released in the state it did, alongside the other much better games on the system, didn't do it any favors. It was already going to be disappointing, let alone when it's forced to be compared to much better games. This isn't a 3DS game anymore. You can't get away with the same shit you could on that system. There is fun to be had with this game. It's Pokemon. I think it's impossible to make one of these not fun, but Nintendo and Game Freak really shouldn't have been able to release this at full price. It feels stuck in the past and dated in every possible way. So 2019 wasn't the Switch's best outing by a long shot, and I think it's safe to say that Nintendo needed to buckle their shit up. That hype the Switch had going for it in 2017 and 2018 just wasn't there in the same way in 2019. Suddenly the system became a lot more divisive, and the games releasing on it were no longer the universally beloved powerhouses they were in the Switch's early years. They needed something big to course correct and reignite hype for the Switch, and come 2020 something big came. But it wasn't from Nintendo.
We have a new name for the coronavirus. The World Health Organization has officially called it COVID-19. Co for corona, Vi for virus, D for disease, and 19 because it started last year.
The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone. All over the world, we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer.
A crisis that has put more than 20 million Americans out of work in only 1 month, and at one point had more than 300 million Americans under stay-at-home orders, transforming even the busiest cities like New York into ghost towns.
We passed a grim milestone today. More than 50,000 Americans have now died from this virus, and the number is likely much higher due to insufficient testing. At this rate, in just a few days, more Americans will have died from coronavirus over a span of roughly 9 weeks than died in the Vietnam War over a span of 12 years.
In 2020, the world was hit by an awful pandemic. People were either sick or locked indoors. Businesses closed, people lost their jobs, and people lost their people. This time was nothing short of horrific for all who lived through it, and now more than ever, people needed a distraction.
During the pandemic, people got into all sorts of things as a distraction. People were trying out alternative makeup, watching YouTubers and streamers like never before, and playing video games. Around this time, video game hardware and software saw a considerable uptick in sales as people needed an escape from their own living rooms.
Nintendo especially saw a massive increase in sales, selling more than 12 million Switches throughout lockdown. Many attributed this not only to the fact that people were stuck inside, but also to a charming little game about life. Animal Crossing New Horizons came out in the end times of March 20th, 2020, and this game had the perfect storm surrounding it. Everyone was already stuck inside playing video games, so a game built around being able to go outside and live your life, collecting things, making friends, all within a package designed to be played for tens or even hundreds of hours. Not to mention the fact that it's cozy and adorable as fuck, so having it roll around during such difficult times was a really nice palate cleanser.
I have such a soft spot for this game. I'm not as into Animal Crossing as some people are. I mean, some people really love Animal Crossing.
Hang on, in Animal Crossing, there's a urinal. Game theory. My villager has a wag.
But this game and the series as a whole is such a lovely way to gamify life.
You're a villager in town living life. You've got to pay your bills with bells, which you can earn by catching bugs or fish or digging up fossils. But don't go selling everything you find because you can donate it to your museum to fill it out. Also make sure not to spend all of your bells on Tom Nook's laundering scheme, because you can also buy all kinds of furniture to spruce up your house and island, or cute outfits or general gameplay improvements like a tool wheel or more infantry slots. And New Horizons just went and gave the player even more options. You're in charge of everything on this island. This island is truly yours to make.
It's a lovely little game and it is so easy to get addicted to. For some people. Me personally, these kind of life sim games like Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing have never really appealed to me because personally, I'd rather play Minecraft.
I can do and build literally whatever the fuck I want in this game. There are no restrictions, no bills to pay or villagers to please. Well, except for Vanessa, but between you and me, she's been eyeing up those divorce papers like they're bread.
Don't get me wrong, games like Animal Crossing and Stardew Valley are great, and I have enjoyed my time with them. But for me personally, they're just a little too restrictive for me to really feel like I have that sense of ownership over my save, you know? Like for me, visiting other people's islands just kind of highlights all the ways it's exactly the same as mine instead of highlighting all the ways it's different and unique. It's definitely a me thing. Like I said, these games are great and I can see why people love them. And in the middle of lockdown, I think that Animal Crossing is exactly what we needed. Lockdown was terrible for everyone, but the way it gave us all this collective struggle and gave birth to so many new communities online is kind of magical.
Like I said, gaming saw a big boom in this time period. People were playing games online with their friends in numbers we hadn't seen up until then and haven't seen since.
And it's around this time that something important happened to me, because this is when I began saving for my very own Switch.
I had been aware of the Switch since launch. I remember coming home from school and watching DanTDM play Super Mario Odyssey in awe, wishing I could have my own Switch and play it for myself. But of course, Switches aren't free, and my parents made it clear that they weren't just gonna buy it for me.
So when lockdown rolled around and all of a sudden I had a shit ton of free time, I had an idea. I was gonna work for my Switch. I began cleaning the house from top to bottom to put money towards it. This is such a special time and memory for me. Thanks to my autism, I was already a socially awkward little twink, and thanks to lockdown and COVID, I was also an anxious mess. Going out into public with fear of a virus and having to wear a face mask was terrible for me. But being able to work towards my own Switch and getting into the Nintendo fandom at the time gave me an incredible distraction and escape. This was such a pivotal moment in my life, the time that I stopped looking at video games as just funny little toys and more as an art form. And once I had finally earned up enough money to buy my own Switch, I couldn't get one.
Yeah, see, while the pandemic gave gaming a big boom in popularity, it also gave it a good boom in manufacturing issues. Hardware was becoming difficult and pricey to ship and produce, so for a good few months I was sitting on Switch funds I couldn't even spend.
In fact, it was so bad that I was back at school, out of lockdown, and still had no Switches. I was so pissed, but one night I came home from school to my mum sat on the sofa with a big smirk on her face and an Argos package next to her, and immediately I knew what it was. Somehow she had netted a Switch, and I was over the moon.
Opening that fucker up and holding it for the very first time in my hands, a Nintendo Switch, was beyond magical and such a precious memory for me. By this point I had waited so long I already had 3 games for it that I got for my birthday. Pokemon Sword, Super Mario Maker 2, and Super Mario Odyssey. See, I grew up playing Super Mario 3D Land, Super Mario Maker, and all kinds of Pokemon games on my 3DS, so having these as my first choice just made sense.
And that first time slotting in Super Mario Odyssey and playing this game I had been dreaming about for 3 years was incredible. This experience symbolized so much for me. It was the light at the end of the tunnel that was lockdown, my prize for making it through such a tough time. We went back into lockdown like 2 months later. Britain is a cancerous lump on the world.
There were more games than just Animal Crossing released in 2020 though, like Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, Clubhouse Games, Super Mario 3D All-Stars, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, Doom Eternal, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, and Paper Mario The Origami King. Some of these interest me a little more than others. Big shock the Mario Girl hasn't played Xenoblade. Starting off with Age of Calamity, this is a Hyrule Warriors game that acts as a prequel to Breath of the Wild. Honestly, a really good time and great for giving people a more developed story set within this version of Hyrule. Then you have Doom, which is a PS4 and Xbox One game ported to Switch.
I keep a bucket around just in case one of those walks in.
I kid, for the most part this is actually a shockingly competent release. I mean, the resolution is closer to ass than actual ass and will constantly dip to help maintain a consistent frame rate, but for the most part this is Doom Eternal in its entirety. It released a year after other consoles and is significantly graphically downgraded, but you can play this at the wake. It's a big game crammed onto the Switch, and I have such a soft spot for these kind of games. The Witcher, Doom, Red Dead Redemption, anytime a game is way too big it would be stupid to put it on the Switch gets put on the Switch, I squeal. Like, these releases are so charming, what are you doing on there? And then you have 3D All-Stars, a collection of 3D Mario's greatest hits.
Ooh.
It only includes 3 games.
Oh.
And there's no bonus features besides the game's soundtracks.
Huh?
It was a limited release and can no longer be bought officially.
Fucking hell.
This collection confuses the fuck out of me. It's like Nintendo was doing this great big celebration for Mario's 35th anniversary and then pissed all over the actual game they used to do it with. Like, this is a fine collection of some of 3D Mario's best games, 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy, but it's so low effort and seriously? Only these 3 games?
I can understand not including Odyssey or 3D World, both of those games were already on the system or coming to the system, but 3D Land and Galaxy 2? You can squirt that onto here?
Compare this to the original All-Stars, where we got all 2D Mario games up to that point, all upgraded and brought up to date, and this feels much more hollow. 64 didn't even get widescreen support. And making it limited time is just so gross. Like, that's such an artificial and empty way to motivate people to buy your product. But at least we got Galaxy, which gave us Rosalina, which makes this game perfect.
I have a problem.
And let's be real, this wasn't done because they wanted to keep it contained to the 35th year of Mario as a part of the celebration. This was done because Nintendo didn't want to give away 3 games for the price of 1.
This brings me to one of the Switch's biggest flaws. The pricing. I love the Switch, but my god is this fucker needy. These games retail at full price and basically never get significant price reductions or go on sale like other consoles. Not to mention Nintendo Switch tax, which is the name given to multi-platform games that cost more on the Switch just because they're on the Switch. And this issue of the Switch being overly expensive hit its peak in 2021. See, in 2021, the Switch had a few big events that had a lot of people looking at the price point and squinting. First of all, let's talk about the games.
In 2021, Nintendo released Mario Golf Super Rush, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, and Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, all at full retail price. I remember seeing endless complaints about the pricing of all of these games. Starting off with Mario Golf, this was an incredibly bare bones Mario sports game with not a lot to do. This plays into what I mentioned earlier about how many of Nintendo's games use the release now, update later strategy on Switch. This hit Mario sports games really hard. Overall, these games just felt lazy on Switch, like something cobbled together just so that Nintendo could put something Mario related out. But we got Rosalina and cute ass outfits with adorable new animations, never mind, Game of the Year! Then we have Skyward Sword HD, which is, as the title implies, Skyward Sword in HD. That's it, that's the game. This game cost as much as Breath of the Wild! Look, I don't have anything against Skyward Sword, but this is a Wii game with no enhancements outside of a few quality of life updates, and they were selling it for full price. Not to mention the new Joy-Con or Amiibo that cost more than usual Amiibo, which is honestly fair enough given how much more intricate this design is, but still! Finally, you have Diamond and Pearl, which embodies everything wrong with Pokemon this generation. Lazy, ugly-ass games that very literally this time around recycle decades-old content at modern day prices.
I remember seeing so many people complain about how these games were priced, and it's easy to see why. A lot of these games were lacking in content or just older games being put on the Switch whilst being priced as much as new full experiences, which is more than just a little frustrating. However, people's frustrations with Nintendo's pricing was about to hit an all-time high, because they made a big change to their online service.
From the very beginning, Nintendo Online has always felt a little odd. Like for the first chunk of the Switch's life, you weren't charged for playing online, and once they began charging for it, the crappy online didn't get any less crappy. I still get kicked out of like 1 in every 5 Splatoon games. So when they announced an expansion pass, it made even less sense.
But in all fairness, they were offering access to N64 and Sega Genesis games, as well as access to DLC and select Switch games, so what's there to complain about?
The games ran poorly and they were charging 20 quid more. Look, if you're getting the service nowadays, I don't think you're getting too ripped off. The quality of online play is bad, which is a real kick in the teeth, but you do get access to a shit ton of NES, SNES, Game Boy Advance, N64 and Sega Genesis games, in addition to online play and DLC. It might not have been worth the price at the time, and I can understand why so many people were pissed off, and I mean pissed off. The announcement trailer for this has like 100,000 dislikes, but nowadays, there are worse ways to spend your money. On October 8th, 2021, Nintendo released the Nintendo Switch OLED alongside Metroid Dread. As for Metroid Dread, this is a charming return to 2D Metroid after years without a proper title. And as for the Switch OLED, it's a Nintendo Switch with an OLED display. Thank God she lived to see this.
For years after the Switch launch, people were talking about the possibility of a Switch Pro, something akin to a PS4 or PS5 Pro. There are rumors that it was going to have a better CPU and output 4K quality video on the go. The Switch 2 can't even do that. No! I know I've done a lot of complaining, but I think that might just be because 2021 might have been the Switch's worst year overall. We got a bunch of overpriced crappy games and a bunch of overpriced crappy services. This wasn't Nintendo's best showing, but there were a few good games released like new Pokemon Snap, Monster Hunter Rise, Super Mario Party Superstars, and my personal favorite, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury.
Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury is a port of Super Mario 3D World from a Wii U, plus Bowser's Fury. What? Let's start with 3D World. 3D World is a very fun, simple 3D platformer geared towards multiplayer. You hop into one of these linear levels with up to 4 people, make your way to the flagpole, and move on to the next level. You have 5 choices of characters to play as. Mario, who's very rounded out, Luigi, who's slower but has a much higher jump, Toad, who's the fastest but can't jump for shit, Peach, who comes with her hover from Super Mario Bros. 2, and the secret unlockable character Rosalina, who has the spin jump from Mario Galaxy.
This game could have my children.
This is a stupidly fun multiplayer-focused Mario game, and that's about it. It won't knock your socks off, and it didn't shake the platforming genre to its core like Odyssey did, but it's a really fun time. The power-ups and level designs are creative and always fresh, the animations are really fun and goofy, and the music here, holy shit.
This is genuinely one of the best Mario soundtracks of all time. I prefer Odyssey's, but I think it comes down to preference. The music in this game has this funky, jazzy, big band style to it, and every track here is toe tapping as fuck. Some of my personal favorites are Switch Scramble Circus, Double Cherry Pass, A Boss Approaches, Histocrat, and Piranha Creeper Creek. This game isn't anything crazy, but it is a great time to play through, and I'm glad it got ported to the Switch.
This game being the headlining 3D Mario for the Wii U was one of like a billion baffling decisions Nintendo made during that generation, and really unfair on this game. Because it was the first and only 3D Mario on the system, it was expected to be this big defining title like Galaxy or 64, and this game just isn't that. That doesn't mean it's bad, the game is very well made and a blast to play, but it isn't gonna sell a console in and of itself. But on the Switch, where we already have a big innovative system seller of a 3D Mario, 3D World feels more at home.
Even then, if you still want this game to deliver a bigger, sandboxy experience, well, 3D World on Switch has you covered because it comes packaged with a new expansion.
Bowser's Fury is a short, albeit welcomed addition to 3D World. You run around this big hub world called Lake Lapcat, which contains all the game's smaller, more linear levels within it. This feels like what would happen if you combined 3D World with Odyssey, and it's a really pleasant time. Like 3D World, it's nothing crazy, it is effectively just more 3D World, only now with a much more open environment, that I'd love to see built on more and pushed further in the next 3D Mario, because this formula is really promising. I also love Fury Bowser here. Every now and then he'll appear all giant and angry, and all you can do is scramble to survive. Unless you get the Giga Cat Bell, which turns you into a Goku Cat Kaiju so you can fight Fury Bowser head on.
Well, they missed that part. The music here is also great, just as good if not better than 3D World's. My favorites here include Scamper Shores, Bowser's Fury, Pounce Bounce Isle, Crisp Climb Castle, Plessie's Theme, and the credits theme. Bowser's Fury was one of a handful of titles in 2021 that really felt like Nintendo was giving it their all. Outside of it, we got some so-so remakes or a few original titles that didn't pack much of a punch or give you much to talk about after playing through them. But in 2022, I think they really turned it around and got off of their asses. I'm gonna say it now. 2022 was the Switch's best year since 2017. The quality and quantity of games here was insane. And it all started with Pokemon Legends Arceus. Oh my god. They did it! This is an actual video game. They realized classic Pokemon mechanics like catching Pokemon in real time, and there are big open environments that look like Play-Doh to explore that are filled with wild Pokemon, actual boss fights we interact with as the player, a different fucking story. This is the Pokemon game I had dreamed about for so long. Don't get me wrong, this game is nowhere near perfect, but holy shit, it's an actual video game. Game Freak is that toxic ex you keep making excuses for. For starters, the graphics are yucky, the music isn't as good as other Pokemon games, honestly kind of forgettable. The battles could have used a little more work in my opinion, and the open zones the game gives you, while good, just don't do a ton for me and feel a little samey. And despite this feeling a lot grander than any Pokemon game up until this point, it's still very small at the end of the day. Only one town and a handful of open environments to explore. Plus, even though the story here is actually different for a change, it's still a bit of a slog to get through. Somehow there still isn't voice acting in these games, which leads to mountains of text you have to get through. Don't get me wrong, this is still a great leap forward for the franchise, even if it's just a spin-off. This is, in my opinion, probably the best Pokemon has ever been. And the sequel Legends ZA seems to be taking the concepts introduced here and building off of them even further, keeping the great sense of exploration and the new mechanics, but putting them into one big open world city, with even more new mechanics like a much more in-depth real-time battling system. This game isn't perfect by any degree, but it finally forced Game Freak off of their asses with an actually good actual video game. Fingers crossed Legends ZA can pick up the slack and give us an actually great actual video game. And just a few months later, another franchise took a huge leap forward. Kirby. Kirby and the Forgotten Land released on the 25th of March 2022, and I haven't played this one. I've never been much of a Kirby person. I don't have anything against Kirby, I've just never really gotten into any Kirby games. This is one I plan on getting around to soon though, because I've heard nothing but good things and it seems like a really great place to enter the franchise with. Forgotten Land takes Kirby and puts him into 3D for the first time, which is kind of wild to me. Kirby's been around since the early 90s, how is he only just getting the 3D treatment? He always seemed like such a perfect candidate for it too. He's a cute little puffball with a big enough fan base hailing from a series of 2D platforms. You're telling me Glover can do it and Kirby can't? Forgotten Land takes Kirby and translates him into 3D. From what I've heard, I've not played the game yet, leave me alone if I'm wrong, perfectly, as well as introducing a bunch of new things into the franchise, most notably Mouthful Mode. Mouthful Mode is very similar to Mario Odyssey's capturing mechanic. You take Kirby and put his throat game to the test, stretching his mouth over big objects, giving him new abilities and proving to the world that Kirby has no gag reflex. That's porn. From what I can tell, because I don't know for sure because I haven't played this game yet, this is a really good game. It does a great job transitioning Kirby into 3D. Skipping forward to September of 2022 and past Mario Strikers Battle League, which was another shitty Mario sports game, another mainstay Nintendo franchise got a new entry. Splatoon 3 released on September 9th, 2022, and is another great entry in the Splatoon franchise. I fucking love Splatoon, and Splatoon 3 is my favorite game in the series so far. I didn't speak about Splatoon 2 earlier in the video though, because in my opinion, it is kind of just a souped up Splatoon 1. I enjoyed my time with this game, don't get me wrong. The online is Splatoon, so it's a shit ton of fun. Salmon Run was a great new addition, and the Octo expansion deserves a chef's kiss and a half. But overall, this game just isn't too overly impressive. But Splatoon 3? Oh my god, this game is good. Again, the online is Splatoon, so it's automatically fun as fuck. You shoot ink and try to cover the majority of the map to win, while your opponents have the same goal. Throw in some of the most unique music in gaming, wacky weapons, and even wackier supers, and you have yourself an addictive as hell gameplay loop. I've seen a lot of people criticize the online game modes like Turf War and Salmon Run for not having enough differences when compared to previous titles, but honestly, I never really got that criticism. With an online game like Splatoon, you can only change so much.
You can add new weapons, new maps, and new ways to traverse, as well as new bosses in Salmon Run. But if you add too much, it can seriously throw off the gameplay. If you think they could have done more to differentiate this game from prior installments, that's okay. But for me personally, I think they struck a good balance between new and old content here. And then you have the story mode, and this is where the differences and upgrades become really obvious. The story mode here takes a lot of inspiration from the Octo expansion of the second game, giving us these levels we can beat with a handful of different weapon selections which act as different difficulties. There is no way I'm getting that done in one take again, we're just gonna go with that. Except instead of taking place in a bland overworld or level select screen, we instead get a much more in-depth overworld, Alterna. It's this snowy, subterranean terrarium with some really interesting lore surrounding it. You run around here collecting eggs to open up kettles to access levels, eventually gaining enough eggs to access the boss kettles. Speaking of which, the bosses in this game are a really fun and nice change of pace. Instead of fighting off various Octarians, instead you fight off members of the idol trio Deep Cut, and these are a really nice bit of fun. Especially Big Man's, which is just one big reference to Super Mario Sunshine, which is fucking adorable. And then for the final boss you have Mr. Grizz, contextualizing the Salmon Run mode and giving us a banger of a boss theme.
Oh yeah, and then there's the music, which as always in Splatoon is fantastic. This time around my favorites are Anarchy Rainbow. Bear with me. Calamari Incantation Free Mix. And the various shop themes.
Finally, there's the Side Order DLC, which is a really neat roguelike take on Splatoon, which also gives us what I believe is Nintendo's first non-binary character. Cool.
Nintendo, make an Octamiibo and my life is yours. Splatoon 3 is, in my opinion, a really great game, and the best entry in the franchise. Especially after all the updates and DLC, there is so much to do here.
If only she made it another day.
A month later, on October 20th, we got Mario + Rabbids Sparks of Hope, which I've already talked about, so we'll skip forward another week to motherfucker again.
Bayonetta 3 is another game I haven't gotten around to yet, and honestly, a lot of these later Switch games came out in a time when I was stupidly busy getting ready to finish school and head off to college, which meant a whole lot of stress and a big lack of time.
But I am actually working towards Bayonetta 3 at the moment. As of recording this, I'm playing through Bayonetta 1 with Bayonetta 2 next up on the chopping block. I'm not going to play it immediately after 1 or 2 because I don't want to burn myself out on the series, and I do also want to give the spin-off that they put out a chance. But mark my words, eventually I will play Bayonetta 3. For the time being though, I will say this about Bayonetta 3.
From what I've heard, this is a pretty solid, albeit lackluster entry for Bayonetta. I won't let that poison my eventual playthrough of the game, and I'll go in with as open a mind as I possibly can. But if I can't give you my own thoughts, I'm gonna give you the thoughts I currently have access to. I'll also say I love how much support Nintendo has given this franchise over the years. Picking it up as an exclusive series on Wii U, putting Bayonetta in Smash, and continuing to support it with new entries and spin-offs over the years is just really sweet to see, and nice to have as Nintendo's big, mature series.
The only other thing I can think to say about this game is that Bayonetta's hair is probably my favorite she's had so far, and I want a Bayonetta 3 amiibo because of it. But with that out the way, we're almost done with Nintendo's 2022, and what a great year it was for Nintendo. New, innovative entries and beloved franchises delivering both quality and quantity, and I can't wait to see their final game of the year.
No, nuh-uh. You don't get a fucking montage, you stinky fucking pile of fuck shit fuck.
Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are easily my least favorite games of all time. No questions asked. If you thought that Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were everything wrong with modern Pokemon, then clearly you haven't met this stinky piece of shit. Let's get this over with.
Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are the first open world Pokemon games, and overall, I see a lot of potential here, especially in the 3 different storylines, which give a lot of personality alongside some really fun and endearing characters.
That's it, those are all the positives. Buckle up, bitch, reality is about to hit hard.
This game should not have been released in the state it did. Period. On launch and even now, this game is an unfinished, embarrassing mess that would have been too expensive if Nintendo paid you to take it off of their hands. Bugs and glitches are everywhere in this game, not to mention it crashes if you so much as hit A, and even if the game wasn't buggy as fuck, it's ugly as fuck anyway. Low poly environments, lazy ass textures that repeat constantly, texture warping, texture clipping, some of the worst pop-in I've ever seen in a video game, frame drops out the ass, and a new art style I already don't like too much. The gameplay here is fine. There's a lot of promise in an open world Pokemon game, and what's fun here is fun. I had a good enough time going from gym to gym, fighting Titan Pokemon and taking on Team Star, but it was constantly interrupted by a game that, at its core, is poorly designed, held together by gum, and is about as easy on the eyes as Bleach, and to be honest, I prefer the fucking Bleach.
These games are Pokemon at its worst. I'm sorry, but they are objectively poorly made. That isn't just my opinion. These games released in such a poor state that Nintendo had to apologize. Do you realize how insane that is? Sword and Shield weren't good, but at least they had some redeeming qualities. Scarlet and Violet, on the other hand, are just bad. They're bad. They were rushed out in the same year as Legends Arceus just because they had to hit a deadline. They could have stepped back, looked at this, and said, no, we won't release this half-baked, unfinished slot. But instead, they released this at full price and then released paid DLC with nothing more than the odd patch that barely improved the game. These games are lazy, greedy, and downright terrible, and what's an extra slap in the face is the fact that they didn't need to be. They released Legends Arceus just a few months earlier, which not only proved that they were capable of making a competent video game, but also meant that Scarlet and Violet absolutely did not have to release in 2022. You already put out a Pokemon game this year. You did not need this. Except they did need this, because what else would they do with the anime, merchandise, and trading cards that coincided with it? This game is a product of the highest grossing media franchise of all time. It releasing in a state like this is by every meaning of the word unacceptable. This game can suck a dick. It's the very definition of lazy greed. Salt in the wound is this sold well, so now they know that this is something they can get away with. Fucking fantastic. Well, that was a bitter end to an otherwise great year. 2023 continued the trend of great games, this time in a much smaller quantity, kicked off by one of the most anticipated games of the generation. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. What do you want me to say? This game had the impossible task of following up Breath of the Wild, and you can tell they wanted to nail it. They took longer developing this than they did Breath of the Wild. They put this game on a bigger card than usual just so that they could cram everything onto it, and ultimately, they delivered a fantastic game. And ultimately, the bigger card thing is no joke. They had to put this game on a more expensive card with more storage space, and because of it, they had to charge $10 more than a usual Switch game. But this doesn't feel like a money-grubbing tactic like Nintendo Online or Scarlet and Violet. This feels like a sacrifice made to benefit the game, because Tears of the Kingdom is like double the size of Breath of the Wild. I don't just mean in the story or items or gameplay, although I definitely do mean it there, but I also mean it literally. There's an entire second map underneath the first one that they kept hidden from us in trailers. More items to mess around with, a fusing and building mechanic, you can shoot up into the sky and explore floating islands, new shrines that look like assholes, portaling through ceilings is satisfying as fuck. Tears of the Kingdom got nominated for Game of the Year, and honestly it probably would have won if this wasn't the year that Baldur's Gate 3 raw dogged the Game Awards. And another crowd pleaser wasn't far away, because in July of 2023 we got Pikmin 4. This is another one of those Nintendo IPs that I'm not against but haven't really dabbled in just yet. Okay, here's my list of preferences. I'm a sucker for Mario, Zelda, Splatoon, and Pokemon. I dabble in Animal Crossing, Metroid, Smash Brothers, and I guess you could count Bayonetta now. And I've never really played Pikmin, Kirby, Fire Emblem, or Xenoblade Chronicles. I don't have anything against them, I just haven't gotten around to them yet. That being said, I am really glad that Pikmin fans got this game because they seemed really happy.
Clock. It's happening! It's 2023!
And this seems like a really solid entry in the franchise, and I have to say, I really love how Nintendo handled this. Pikmin 3 was already on the Switch, but since Pikmin 1 and 2 weren't, they released them on the eShop as a bundle in June and gave them a physical release later in September. I love seeing Nintendo do this with series like Bayonetta or Pikmin. They know these series are niche and don't have the biggest fan base, so they give them the best chance they can and make them as accessible as possible.
However, Nintendo wasn't done just yet because they still had one more ace up their sleeve. A brand new 2D Mario, in fact. Not only a new 2D Mario, but the first 2D Mario to ditch the new Super Mario Bros. Series since the DS and Wii.
Super Mario Bros. Wonder was a beautiful return to form for 2D Mario, with a pleasant art style, an absolutely lovely soundtrack, and incredibly refreshing gameplay, especially after literal decades of new Super Mario Bros. I mean, look at this art style, it feels like an old school cartoon. It goes a long way in making this game feel new and fresh.
Because at the end of the day, even though this game is great, it's still 2D Mario, it's nothing too ground shaking.
You play through the levels nabbing collectibles, defeating enemies, and topping the flagpole. But the presentation goes a long way in making this feel different and unique. The story here is barely different, but the fact we got these zany little animations makes it feel so alive, like 3D World or Galaxy. And the new Wonder Flowers are a great addition. Everyone changes the level into something entirely new and crazy. Oh, and the soundtrack is just lovely.
This game isn't anything too world-shattering, but it is a beautiful return to form for 2D Mario, and a great addition to the Switch's library. I did find it kind of funny how it released the same day as Spider-Man 2 though. I had Spider-Man 2 on pre-order since it was the game I was more excited for at the time, and when I got there was this big line of people, and it was a lot of fun to guess whether they were there for Super Mario Wonder or for Spider-Man 2. You know, we're already 36 pages in.
Spider-Man 2 released on the 20th of October 2023, the longer-awaited sequel to Spider-Man on PS4, which I have a major soft spot for. Believe it or not, the Switch wasn't the first console I saved up for as a kid.
I'm having an affair.
The PS4 was the first console I ever saved up for, and on day one I picked up Spider-Man and had a blast playing through it. A few years later, I played Miles Morales, and had a blast with that too. A much shorter blast and still on my PS4 because it wasn't exactly worth buying a PS5 over, but a blast nonetheless. And during the build up to Spider-Man 2, after that initial trailer, I realized I needed to play this game. So I got a PS5, pre-ordered Spider-Man 2, and after years of waiting and hundreds of pounds,
it was fine.
This is not a bad game by any means, and I love it to death. I mean, from the very beginning, it's throwing some insane spectacle at you. You fight a giant Sandman as Peter and Miles, and you get thrown across the city, and oh my god, Spider-Man is so cool. And I love how good the swinging feels in this game. If you could bottle and sell an orgasm, it wouldn't feel as good as this. And the spruced up combat, although not a revolutionary upgrade, is really nice, especially the boss fights.
However, overall the game plays it very safe, and I don't feel like it really ever hit the heights of the first game for me. The story just didn't hit as hard, and all in all, this just didn't leave as big of an impact for me. Glad I played it, and I loved it to bits. I even beat it one-handed in this hour-long video that took me like 3 months to make, even though it ultimately flopped and did really poorly. Please, dear God, don't let this be the same thing. But it didn't quite hit as hard as the first one for me.
Besides all that, 2023 gave us Fire Emblem Engage, Bayonetta Origins, Octopath Traveler 2, Advance Wars Reboot Camp, Kirby's Return to Dreamland, Detective Pikachu Returns, Super Mario RPG, and Metroid Prime Remastered. A beautiful remaster, bringing the beloved game back with upgraded visuals and quality of life changes, and making the game a joy for older fans and a great introduction for newcomers. Mortal Kombat 1 on the Nintendo Switch. The fuck is that? Okay, we should probably talk about this.
Around 2023 is when demand for a Switch upgrade or full-on successor hit an all-time high.
Multi-platform games have never been the Switch's strong suit, but with the PS5 and Xbox Series being years old at this point, developers were really starting to take advantage of their hardware, which made porting them to Switch, a system that struggled with PS4 and Xbox One games, a real issue. Don't get me wrong, Mortal Kombat 1 is a really extreme example, and it's more of a victim of a rushed port than being solely the fault of the hardware.
But despite this game being a victim of a rushed release, it's hard to deny that at this point, the Switch was really beginning to lag behind, when it already wasn't the top banana at launch. The system was really struggling to put out good or even competent looking titles by the end of 2023, and look, personally, I don't really give much of a shit about fidelity. If it runs at 30 frames per second and I can make out what's on the screen, then I am more than happy. I don't care what frame rate my game runs in, so long as it runs consistently well, and most of the time nowadays when people point towards bad frame rate, I genuinely cannot tell what they're on about. People will point towards 60 frames per second as if it's some poor bare minimum, and honestly, I just don't fucking care. I'm not saying that this isn't better, I'm just saying that I don't care. I brought a Nintendo Switch for Animal Crossing.
And don't get me wrong, games that go for a hyper-realistic style and push fidelity are impressive, and I do enjoy them. I spent half of God of War Ragnarok ogling at how good the facial animations and motion capture was. But personally, I don't want every game to look like this. However impressive it might be, and however much it might suit this game, expecting and wanting Mario or Kirby or Splatoon to fit into this style just isn't as fun or as interesting as something like this. For games like Zelda and Metroid, sure, I could see a world where these games take a hyper-realistic approach and it doesn't feel out of place. But not every game needs this. That being said, yeah, the Switch needed an upgrade.
Even I, in all of my not giving a shit ways, have to admit that the Switch is barely chugging by at this point. So people assumed, and it began being heavily rumored, that in 2024 Nintendo would release the successor to the Switch. And it kinda made sense. In many ways 2023 was a fitting swan song for the Switch. We got a new mainline Zelda at the beginning of the year and a new mainline Mario at the end of the year, just like the Switch's launch. And games we were promised at the beginning of the generation like Bayonetta 3, or games we were asking for since before the Switch like Pikmin 4 finally came out. By the end of 2023, all signs were pointing towards 2024 being the year we finally get a new Nintendo console.
I really need to get my eyes checked.
Surely some new piece of great Nintendo hardware must have been released in 2024. At this point, I'll take anything. No, that works.
Nintendo Alarma was a Nintendo-branded alarm clock released as an exclusive offer to Nintendo Online members for $100. It's a fucking alarm clock. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know how to make a cum joke about this one.
Nintendo has used this release strategy a couple of times throughout the Switch's life, offering products exclusively to NSO members, most notably with a series of retro replica controllers.
These are so neat. If I had infinite money, I would own every single one of these. I find it so funny how most of these are pretty much for classic controllers only for the Switch, but the NES controllers specifically connect to the Switch like Joy-Con. Like, that is so cute. 2024 was such a weird year for the Switch, a year where we got good games and plenty of them, but they were all smaller titles like remakes or spin-offs. The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, Princess Peach Showtime, Mario & Luigi Brothership, Super Mario Party Jamboree, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, and Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. All of these games were solid at the very least. I mean, seeing Zelda and Peach get their own games is an absolute joy I'm gonna cherish, because Lord knows when Nintendo will do that again. Mario & Luigi Brothership and Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door are really solid titles for people who are big fans of Mario RPGs. Not me though, I only play the ones with the rabbits, and I only eat the food that's beige. Luigi's Mansion 2 was a fine remaster, and Super Mario Party Jamboree is just straight up the best Mario Party on the system.
These are all solid titles, and if you were on the Switch in 2024, you had stuff to play, and good stuff at that. But this was when it became clear that the Nintendo Switch was really winding down. Don't get me wrong, games have still been selling for the system. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sold over 20 million copies, Splatoon 3 sold 10 million, and Metroid Dread is the highest selling Metroid game to date. But all we were getting by 2024 was remakes and remasters, with not a ton to look forward to in the future. I mean, there was Metroid Prime 4, which was pretty hype considering it's been almost a decade, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, which isn't a new game, and Pokemon Legends ZA, which is exciting, but in late 2024, we knew next to nothing about it. Throughout 2024, I saw more and more people wondering where the Switch's successor was, and to be honest, I began wondering that myself. The Switch is great and has been great since launch, but throughout the years I kind of feel like we've lost something from the beginning of its life. Ever since its launch, it feels like we've strayed further and further from that magical feeling from its early days. From that Nintendo Switch hype. It was unforgettable, but by 2024, getting excited for new Switch games was beginning to get harder and harder. It wasn't new, it didn't have anything to lose, and with the release of things like the PlayStation Portal or Steam Deck or Switch Lite or OLED, it stopped feeling special. There are so many ways to play big console games on the go now, it's not as novel anymore, and for a while there, I lost interest. But finally, after years of waiting, Nintendo opened up 2025 with a bigger surprise than any of us could have ever imagined.
Ew, not that. This. After 8 years of the Nintendo Switch, they finally did it. The Switch is my favorite console of all time. I love this thing to death. It has some of the best games, some giant leaps forward for beloved series, some triumphant returns of old favorites, and the ultimate releases of their respective franchises. I mean, just look at the games released for this fucker. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Super Mario Odyssey, Super Mario Wonder, Splatoon 2, Splatoon 3, Pikmin 4, Kirby the Forgotten Land, Pokemon Legends Arceus, Xenoblade 2, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Metroid Dread, Metroid Prime 4, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Luigi's Mansion 3, Bayonetta 3, I could keep going! This system has incredible games, but it also saved Nintendo. The Wii U was a fucking disgrace and almost put them in the dirt, then the Switch came out swinging and made them relevant again. Put them back in the limelight, making it at least a little less embarrassing to be called a Nintendo fan. And when lockdown hit, people used it as a way to live life as normally as possible. Ring Fit and Just Dance to keep active, Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, and Minecraft to feel like they were getting outside and living life, and who knows how many other games that were just pure distractions. Untitled Goose Game, bitch!
The Switch means so much to me. It is my favorite system of all time, no matter how flawed it may be. And even though it's come to the end of its life, that doesn't mean it's simply going to be forgotten or replaced by the Switch 2. The Switch was great, and I'll always treasure my time with it, especially because it was my childhood console. And the Switch 2 is going to be the first console that I own and live through as an adult. And as for whatever the Switch 2 has in store, I can't wait to see what gets me hyped next.
Gonna start.